What's up, guys? I'm here today to talk about Project Cars 2. This is my first review of a game that's not NASCAR related. Uh, those of you who do watch me know that that's primarily what I talk about. But in this case, I'm going to talk about a different game, and it's still a racing game. So I'm going to give you my thoughts on it. And before we get into it, I'm going to make it clear that I'm not really a hardcore simulation guy. So there are aspects of this game that I can't really get into and criticize or in critique and talk about in depth because I'm not really a simulation guy. And there's a lot of videos out, really good videos by people who are simulation racers, and they can give you a deeper uh, insight into the game. So I'm giving you my point of view as an average gamer, right? Um, and that's primarily what this review is. So it's really just my opinion. And like I said, a hardcore simulation racer is gonna see things in this game that it may go over my head. So I don't want to pretend that I'm something I'm not, and that's what I'm trying to give you guys this disclaimer that I'm just an average gamer and I'm giving you my review of this. When I talk about NASCAR games, I can talk about it in depth because that's what that's what I'm all about. So in that sense, I feel I can talk just about anything in relation to NASCAR games. But in this game, it's a little different. And like I said, there are aspects of this game that I won't be able to really get into the deep details and critique because I'm not an expert. So that's all I wanted to say before I get into it. Now, this game I think it's definitely not something for everyone. That's my feeling. Um, it's it's a simulation game. It's not art. I didn't see anything arcadey about it. There's nothing that feels arcadey about it. This is definitely more hardcore simulation. Now, like I said, a hardcore simulator expert or someone who plays a ton of iRacing may look at this and then be able to tell you a completely different, opinion. But as an average gamer, I found this game to be a hardcore simulator. Okay, and that is what it's trying to be. And for me, it absolutely nails that. So it's, in my opinion, it's an acquired taste. Um, you'll know almost right away when you start playing this game if you like it or not. And I think most people will like it, but there are people who aren't used to this level of simulation that may get I don't want to say the word turned off, but easily dissuaded from it. Like it could kind of push you away because there are aspects of it that are a little bit too hardcore. The physics, the handling, that kind of stuff. It's real. It's very realistic as far as I'm concerned. So I find it to be an acquired taste. I loved it. Um, I'm a car enthusiast, and I think this game is made to appeal to a car enthusiast, somebody who just loves cars, doesn't really care about what type of cars, just the whole automobile industry and racing in general. Okay, if you're a fan of these things, then this is the game for you. Okay, so that being said, um, it does take a while to get used to it. You do gotta have some patience. You're not gonna be able to just dive in and just like run great. Okay, the AI is pretty hard in my opinion. I'm just an average gamer. I don't think I'm a great driver. I think I'm average to slightly above average. So judging it by that, I did find it to be quite challenging. So and that's a great thing because one thing you have with this game, you have a ton of options to tune the AI to your preferences. There are two different settings. You have AI difficulty and AI aggressiveness. So you got to find that balance for each track and every race, car discipline has its own feel. They really this game looks fantastic graphically. I have very little to complain about. It's a beautiful looking game. I did get it on PC. It's actually my first quote unquote PC game. Um, and I wanted to get the full experience. I didn't want to be limited. So I wanted to see what all having everything turned up all the way, maxed out settings, and get the full experience and what that would be like. And that's what I'm getting. So it's a beautiful looking game. Um, at times I do find it to be jaw dropping beautiful. Um, and the sound, it's phenomenal. It's the best sounding race game I've ever heard. Period. In my opinion, it's a 10 out of 10 in terms of sound. If you don't have a high quality headset or a good surround system, I highly suggest you get something like that because this game is worth it. It if for anyone who doesn't believe that sound is that important or adds that level of immersion to a game, you really need to play this game with a good headset or a good surround system. You're doing a disservice to yourself if you're just having the sound come through your TV or a monitor with some crappy speakers. You really need to have a dedicated surround system or a high quality headset. I promise you, you won't regret it. So if there was ever a game that was an audio pusher, this is it. To me, it's a 10 out of 10. It's absolutely mind blowing, awesome. When you hear this game through a proper sound system, that in combination with the phenomenal force feedback, which is also great, they really put a lot of work into it. It's improved from last year. You really feel everything properly, the way it's meant to be felt. And when you play other games, then you realize how poorly done it's in other titles. I'm not going to name names, but you guys know what I'm talking about. Um, Between the force feedback and the sound and the beautiful visuals, this is truly an immersive experience. When you rev those engines and you shift, you can literally almost feel like you're in a real car. It's phenomenal. So I love this. I mean, that was all done extremely well. Everything in this game is a step up from last year. Everything's been improved, polished, and tweaked. And it really shows. I love this game. I give this game a solid 9 out of 10 overall. And like I said, the sound alone is it's a 10 out of 10. I don't know how much more they could have improved the sound. I really don't. Not everything about this game is perfect. And like I said, there is a learning curve. This is not something that I found I could just dive into and really run balls to the wall. If you try to do that without messing around with all the settings and taking the time to really tweak everything, it's going to be very difficult. So it does require patience. And that's why I say this game, it is an acquired taste. And if you're a car enthusiast and you want a more realistic experience, this game is awesome. This is a definite pickup. So, I do find it that, yeah, the average guy is not going to just be able to dive in and not touch anything and just run balls to the wall. The AI, like I said, I actually had to turn down the AI and the aggressiveness to get it to where I can race and be competitive. Now, As I said, everything's not perfect, and that's one of the things about this game that it just does require patience, and it does require you to spend a lot of time. And then just because you got the setting just right for you at one track with one particular type of vehicle, that goes right out the window. As soon as you get into a different car, different track, every every time you got to go through the process again and again. So it does take a lot of patience, and you have to invest time in getting these cars set up, and you know having the AI tuned. There are races where I actually am very good, and I can win, and then the very next race against the same AI, it's hard to just stay mid pack. So there's a big wide spectrum of difficulty in this game. Now you can tailor this game perfectly to suit anybody, but it takes time and it takes patience, and you do have to go through a lot of trials and error and all that stuff. So that's one of the things that I don't know if I should call it a negative, really, because that's what a simulator is. You do just have to, it's a bigger learning curve, and it does require more of a patience on your side. So is that really a negative? I don't know if it's proper for me to put that as a negative, but it's just one of those things that it could push people away. And there are times where I found myself a little more appreciative of some more quote unquote arcadey type of games. There is a lot to be said for, you know, the getting away from the realism and just making games more accessible and easier to drive. So there's always a pro and a con, and there are times where I found myself, hey, I'm glad that, Heat 2 isn't this realistic, because it would be a handful. And in this game, the first time I jumped into a cup car or a stock car, it's not really a cup car, but a stock car at Texas, I couldn't run that car, balls to the wall. It wanted to wreck on every corner. So I had to detune everything and get everything tightened up. It was a very loose setup. I could not keep up with the AI at all. It wasn't even close. It was embarrassing. So that leads me to one of the best things I love about this game is the race engineer, which I've been screaming about for years in terms of NASCAR games, what I called an automatic crew chief. This game is the first game to implement a system that actually guides you through setting up these cars. So those of you who feel like, oh my God, I can't handle these cars, you have a system that guides you and helps you and actually makes decisions for you depending on the questions you answer about how the car is handling. And it works great, and it's something I've always wanted to see. I've never heard anyone talk about it. Like, I've been talking about this as an idea for years, all the way going back to 2012 with Utechnic's NASCAR games. And it's the first time I've actually seen it implemented. And I can't tell you how good it makes me feel to see an idea that I never saw or heard anyone talk about. And I'm not saying I'm the only one who ever did. I'm just saying I never saw anyone else talk about it. And I've always been bringing this up. And I'm like, you know what? These race games need, especially NASCAR, needs a way to bridge the gap between the average gamer who, even sophisticated NASCAR fans don't, for the most part, okay, don't really fully understand the technical aspects of race setups. I know a lot about cars. I've had a lot of cars in my life. I've had well over 30 cars I've worked on. I've rebuilt from the ground up. I've done everything you can do to a car except rebuild a transmission. I've built engines. I've built everything. I've rebuilt everything from scratch. I've had a lot of cars, mostly muscle cars from the 70s. I had a 69 Plymouth. I had several Dodge Darts, uh, Dusters, Plymouth Dusters. I had a Dodge Demon, which is just like a Duster. Those of you who are Mopar guys, I'm a Mopar guy, and which is Dodge, Plymouth, Chrysler. And those are the type of muscle cars I've always had. Mostly A bodies like Dodge, Darts and Dusters and stuff like that. They were cheap to get. When I was growing up or going back many years when I was in my 20s, I could find a Dodge Dart for $1,000, $1,200, and just rebuild it. So I know a lot about car mechanics. But the reason I bring that up is there's a world of difference between being an astute mechanic and understanding race setups. It's just another level. So I don't fully understand how to make a race car, you know, handled properly, how to get more speed out of it. All the aspects that go into race setups, it's engineering level stuff, right? So there's always been a disconnect between just most gamers, not all, but most, and these race games where you're kind of left on your own to figure this stuff out. Very little in terms of teaching you what everything does. Some games have done it through descriptions and stuff, but never on a level like this where you had an engineer who actually asked you questions based on your what complaints you had about the car, and then he would tell you this is what we can do, and then you just click and he does it for you, and you go back out on the track and you see the difference and it works. Now, is it perfect? No, it's not perfect, but it's the first time it's been implemented and it works really well. My thing is I'd like to see it go even deeper. It is not a fix-all, right? So there are aspects that you can only alter by going deep into the car menu. So it doesn't really address everything, but it does enough to make fundamental changes to the handling of the car. And you learn from it, and it really you don't feel like you're just left to your own devices and trying to figure stuff out through trial and error, which requires a ton of time just spent practicing and stuff. And that is, to me, has always been a huge problem with race games in general. So I love seeing this in the game. It's one of my favorite aspects of the game, and I do expect them to go much more in depth with it in future iterations of the game. Maybe the next game takes it to a whole other level, right? Where the engineer can just really get deeper into it. But you literally can take just about any car in the game and improve on it to the point where a car you cannot handle at all becomes manageable. That doesn't mean you're going to start breaking records or, destroying the AI. That's not a cure-all. But it does take you and put you in a place where you can actually drive these cars. But like I said, it needs to go deeper. So I love seeing it in the game. It's one of my favorite things in the game. And I truly hope that 704 Games is taking notes, because this thing is what NASCAR games desperately need to, bridge that gap. It's been a problem that's been completely ignored, throughout the entire history of NASCAR games. So I hope to see that. This is the only time I'm going to mention 704 and the NASCAR games and stuff. But I had to throw that out there. But I love the race engineer. The visuals are awesome. The sound is phenomenal. The other critique, or maybe one of the few critiques I have of the game, is the car list in the game. There are a lot of cars, but most of them are European cars, and a lot of them are very similar. So you get cars that are very close to to each other, right? A lot of exotic race cars that you never get to see, right? So it's cool that they're in the game, but at some point you almost feel like there's no familiarity, right? Very few people actually have driven these cars, so it's cool that you're able to drive it. But I would like to see more classic cars, older cars. I'm more of an old school American muscle guy, right? Those are the cars I've always had. Um, and the only muscle car I remember seeing in the game is a '69 Camaro, and it's a specialty car. It's one of those cars from the Trans Am series, right? So I would have loved to see an AAR Cuda or an AMX, right? That used to compete with these Camaros, and it's an awesome car. When you drive it in the game, the sound, the shifting, the force feedback, the that feel of that old school muscle, right? It's unsophisticated, but it's brute strength, right? And that's the things that make classic muscle cars what they are and have that character. They absolutely nailed it with this '69 Camaro. Unfortunately, it's pretty much the only muscle car in the game, like old school American muscle. Uh, Even other classics, that we've seen in other games. Forza, for instance, is a game that has a phenomenal list of cars. Now, I don't expect these guys to have that ridiculous list, right? Because it's incredible, right? But I do think they need to branch out and add a few more cars that we don't normally see. This is a very European type game, very heavy into European cars and exotics. So, and even though the list numerically is impressive, it's just when you go through everything, it doesn't really feel like it's as expansive as you would expect. So I'd like to see more American cars, classics, uh, low lower tier cars, right? I really enjoy driving the slower type cars, the cars that are not as sophisticated, right? The beaters and stuff. Um, I like the old Datsuns and stuff. So I'd like to see more of those. And I do find sometimes those cars are even more fun to drive than like these $1 million cars you see in the game, super sophisticated. Uh, but there's a difference, right? But they do nail every car, feels different. The tire model in this game is phenomenal. You really do feel lap after lap the car, the changes that it goes through. As the tire wears, the car handles different. Another thing I really enjoyed and I didn't expect to was the spotter. That European spotter. I wasn't expecting to really like it. Um, and it's not as informative in terms of who's around you, but it's informative in other ways. Like I love that he's constantly letting you know about your lap times and your times through different segments of the track. Um, Also, one thing I really love that I do think, I'm sorry, one more time with NASCAR and 704, the spotter is very encouraging in this game, and that's something else that's been missing in NASCAR games, and I want to see more of that. Uh, the spotter in this game, he's encouraging. When you make a pass or when you get close to someone in front of you, he does encourage you, like to pushes you a little further to push yourself to make that pass, right? And when you make the pass, he lets you know, hey man, good job there. Let's go after the next guy. Or when vice versa, when you got a guy who's creeping up on you, he lets you know, hey man, you got a guy on your tail. You gotta, get with it. So I really enjoyed that aspect of the spotter, and I didn't expect that. So I like the spotter. In terms of constant information as it pertains to where the other AI is and stuff like that, it could use a little work. The AI in particular, to me, it's a little bit hit and miss, right? Overall, it's not bad, but there are times where it could be a little clunky. Um, the physics also making contact with the AI, it feels like boats. You get that. It sounds like two boats hitting each other, a little bit like bumper carish type. it's just something there that's the only thing I don't find realistic. But there's a wide range, like I said, with the AI. You do have to spend so much time really fiddling with the AI, and what works in one track or one vehicle, it just changes from track to track. So you do got to reset. You do got to spend more time tweaking it. And thank God for the engineer, because he's there to help. So without that engineer, I think it would be a big turnoff, because it's like, okay, this is too much. And like I said, when I got into that stock car at Texas for the first time, and I said, okay, I'm a NASCAR guy. I know exactly how to attack this track. Man, let me tell you, it was a handful. I was hitting the wall. I was basically barely holding off from spinning the car out. The AI was gone. And I'm like, okay, man, I got to do something. And the engineer was able to get me to the point where the car was much more manageable. But then, like I said, there is a limit. And it did hit a limit to what you can do with the car. And then you were like, okay, now I'm kind of stuck. Unless you really get into the editing of the setup, and then that's where you're on your own. And I don't know enough about it to do that, so I kind of got stuck at a certain point where, okay, I can drive the car better, but I still can't really compete with the AI. So the sound is, oh my god, it's awesome. And the shifting, the force feedback, those are the highlights of this game for me. But like I said, it's an acquired taste. It's not going to be for everyone. But like I said, this game gets a 9 out of 10. It's a must buy for anybody who's a car enthusiast. That's really what this game is about. In terms of presentation, I gotta be honest, there isn't much presentation in the game. Um, However, this actually is the type of game that can get away with that. I mean, what kind of presentation is necessary? It's a car enthusiast game. It's really all about the cars, the tracks, and the feel of driving these cars. Like going out on a Sunday drive in a nice car and just go taking, a windy road with no traffic, and just rowing through gears, and really being able to get on that car and just take in the sound and take in the scenery. That's what this game is all about. And it's truly for car enthusiasts. Okay, it's not a sports game. Yeah, there's racing, and there are these little mini leagues, and you go through that and you progress. But I don't consider it a full-on sports game, which is why it's okay that you don't have in-depth stats or presentation that ties everything in your career together. Really, it's the one time I could honestly say doesn't really need it. It's not really what this game is about, in my opinion, and it's fine that it's not there. But in all honesty, I do have to say the presentation, there just really isn't much. But it's not necessary here. Um, I really enjoyed this game. 9 out of 10, a must buy. If you love cars and you really want to experience a more realistic game, driving type simulator, here it is, man. This is it. And there are other games out there. I mean, Gran Turismo Sport's not out yet, and that's a big competitor. And Forza I haven't played, but there's a lot of good racing games for people like us who enjoy race games. But this one right here, Project Cars 2, absolute. I highly recommend it. Just make sure you understand. Uh, there is a learning curve. Okay, so you got to have a little patience with this game, but it does reward you. With the time you spend with it, and you get better at it. You get to know the tracks. You get to know each car, the nuances, uh, and you learn to play with all the setups and use the race engineer. It's rewarding. So I love this game, and that's what I think about it. So, what do you guys think about it? And until next time, I'll see you guys around. I look forward to your comments. Later.